may seem counterintuitive to some to ask what in the world does Chile and its transition to democracy have to do with Armenia, with the Armenian case, and the answer is that it has a lot. So in the few minutes that I have here, I'm going to very quickly compress 40 years of history. In 1973, the democratically elected socialist government of Salvador Allende, for which I worked, was overthrown by a military coup led by General Augusto Pinochet. Now, this resulted in a total and complete shutdown of all political institutions. After 100 years of parliamentary democracy in Chile, basically uninterrupted, it was abolished overnight. Congress was closed, political parties were outlawed, and a reign of terror was imposed where people were hunted down, torture was massive, so it was really a very, very bleak situation. People were disappeared, there was no free expression, it was about as dark as you can get. In 1980, Pinochet imposed a new constitution which made things worse, not better. It institutionalized the dictatorship, and it laid out a plan for the future, a transition to nobody knew what. But what that 1980 Constitution did was said, okay, Pinochet can remain in power 8 more years, and in 1988 we're going to have a plebiscite to see if he continues another 8 years. And if not, then we'll do something. Maybe we'll have elections. Literally like that. So it was, again, even darker by 1980. In the early 1980s, 1983 in specific, more or less spontaneously, protests began to erupt. This was in an atmosphere where there was still a curfew after 10 years of dictatorship. And the protests became massive, and they came from the bottom. They were not coordinated by the political parties in the opposition that had mostly been obliterated. These demonstrations really rocked the regime. By 1988, when the plebiscite was approaching, there was a big debate in the civil society whether or not the opposition on the ground should participate or not in the referendum, assuming that the referendum was going to be rigged by Pinochet. A decision was made by civil society to participate in the referendum with now re-emerging but very tenuous political parties of the opposition. I was there also for the referendum in 1988. Nobody expected Pinochet to lose, but he lost. He didn't expect it either, and he lost. By 1990, there was a purely civilian government elected, and there was the appearance of, I would say, normal democratic norms. Problem was that the Constitution from 1980 was still in effect, and it granted extraordinary powers to Pinochet himself, who was no longer the dictator, but was just the commander of the armed forces forever. It allowed the military to appoint senators. It allowed a National Security Council to override the parliament. I see I only have about a half a minute left, so I'll be very quick. What's happened since 1990, and that's interesting because it coincides more or less with the transition beginning in Armenia, is that in these past 25 or 26 years, the democracy in Chile has blossomed, but it is still not complete. There's still holes left by that old constitution. that continues to be reformed. And I think the point that I want to make, that went fast, the point that I want to make is that all of those changes to perfect the democracy, and it's not perfect by any means, has come from below. It's come because there's been a continuous, massive civil society and social movement that can still bring several 100,000 people into the streets in Chile and pressure the government. And even though the government is fiercely rooted in the anti-dictatorial forces, even though the president, the current president, is a woman who had been tortured by the military and her father had been killed by the military, the government still needs to be pushed to fill these democratic holes. And that would be my finishing thought, that if you don't have pressure from the bottom for democratic change, it's not going to happen.
Thank you.